Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 5, Prahlada, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu, text number 18. Iti tam vividopayer Bhishayams Tarjanadibi Paradam Grahayam Asa Trivargasyo Papadyanam Ititam vidopayer Bhishayams Tarjanadibi Paradam Grahayam Asa Trivargasyo Papadanam.
Ititam vividhopaya Bhishayam starjanadhivi Prahladananda Swami Trivargasyo Papadanam.
Dami. Louder. Iti, in this way, tam, him, Prahlad Maharaj, vivida upayai, by various means, Bhishayan, threatening, Tarjana adibi, by chastisement, threats, etc. Paradam, unto Prahlad Maharaj, Grahayan asa, taught, Trivargasya, the three goals of life, the paths of religion, economic development, and sense gratification. A little too much, I guess. The paths of religion. Let's try that again. The paths of religion, economic development, and sense gratification. Upapadanam, scriptures that presents. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Shanda and Amarka, the teachers of Prahlad Maharaj, chastised and threatened their disciple in various ways and began teaching him about the paths of religion, economic development, and sense gratification. This is the way they educated him. Well, at least they taught religion. Nowadays, they're not even allowed to teach religion. Purport. In this verse, the word paradam, grahayam, asa are important. The words grahayam, asa literally mean that they tried to induce Prahlad Maharaj to accept the path of Dharma, Artha, and Kama. Religion, economic development, and sense gratification. People are generally preoccupied with these three concerns, without interest in the path of liberation. Hiranyakashipu, father of Prahlad Maharaj, was simply interested in gold and sense enjoyment. The word Hiranya means gold, and Kashipu refers to soft cushions and bedding on which people enjoy sense gratification. The word Prahlada, however, refers to one who is always joyful in understanding Brahman, Brahmabhuta Prasanatma. Prahlad means Prasanatma, always joyful. Prahlad was always joyful in worshiping the Lord, but in accordance with the instructions of Hiranyakashipu, the teachers were interested in teaching him about material things. Materialistic persons think that the path of religion is meant for improving their material conditions. The materialist goes to a temple to worship many varieties of demigods just to receive some benediction to improve his material life. He goes to a sadhu or a so-called swami to take advantage of an easy method for achieving material opulence. In the name of religion, the so-called sadhus try to satisfy the senses of the materialists by showing them shortcuts to material opulence. Sometimes they give some talisman or blessing. Sometimes they attract materialistic persons by producing gold. They then declare themselves God, and foolish materialists are attracted to them for economic development. As a result of this process of cheating, others are reluctant to accept a religious process. And instead, they advise people in general to work for material advancement. This is going on all over the world, not only now, but since time immemorial. No one is interested in moksha, liberation. There are four principles: dharma, religion; artha, economic development; kama, sense gratification; and moksha, liberation. People accept religion to become materially opulent. And why should one be materially opulent? For sense gratification. Thus people prefer these three margas, three paths of materialistic life. No one is interested in liberation. Anyone here interested in liberation? One. Okay, one person. I have to change Bhagavatam. But no one but one person is interested in Even before the process of devotional service, Krishna consciousness is extremely difficult to understand. Therefore, the process of devotional service, Krishna consciousness, is extremely difficult to understand. This will be explained later by Prahlad Maharaj. The teachers Shananda and Amarka tried to induce Prahlad Maharaj to accept the materialistic way of life, but actually their attempt was a failure. Iti tam vivi dopayera bhavishams tarb janadipi paradam grahayam asa Shri Vargasyo Papadanam. Shananda and Amarka, the teachers of Prahlad Maharaj, chastised and threatened their disciple in various ways, began teaching him about the paths of religion, economic development, and sense gratification. This is the way they educated him. Vam Vishnu Varaya Krishna Prasthaya Buddha Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Bacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadyade Sadarne. As we can see, the demons in Satya Yuga were more pious because they included religion in their school curriculum. Nowadays, in most places in the world, you're not allowed to teach religion in school. But the demons in Satya Yuga allowed it. And therefore, in the absence of religion, the demons can't make any advancement whatsoever. Because religion teaches one how to regulate one's life in such a way as to actually obtain economic development. Economic development means nice food and milk, without disturbing the atmosphere, without polluting the water, without polluting the air, without polluting people's consciousness. That's economic development. And then it's possible to try to satisfy the senses. If there's no good food, then it's not possible for having any sense gratification, real sense gratification. Anad bhavati bhutani parjana anavasambhava jagna bhavati. So, anad bhavati bhutani, all of the entities subsist on food grains. As Prabhupada once said, more or less, that if we have a big Sunday feast, people will come. If there's no prasadam, they won't come back next week. As we can see many times, if you arrange the schedule in such a way, people will come exactly at the moment that the class ends when prasadam starts. They have it timed. The super soul, because of their deep prayer and meditation, the super soul tells them exactly when class will end. So they don't get contaminated by philosophy and destroy their enthusiasm over prasadam. But actually, religion is meant ultimately for liberation. But in Kali Yuga, there is no liberation. There is no dharma. Dharma is generally manifested in this world by the Kshatriyas. And liberation is manifested by the Brahmins. And the Vaishyas and the Shudras, they manifest economic development and sense gratification, respectively. But because there are no Vaishyas, certainly there are no Brahmins in Kali Yuga, there are certainly no Kshatriyas, and there apparently are there's a lot of Shudras, but even that's disappearing. Because as we read yesterday, unless you're following the regular principles, some regular principles, you're not even a Shudra. You must be an animal. And Vaishyas have to protect cows. They have to protect the land. If they're not protecting the cows, they're not protecting the land, they're actually not Vaishyas. They're Naradamas. So the whole civilization, the whole society is flooded with Naradamas and Mudas. There may be some aspect of religious principles, but they're not very strong, because the bull of religiosity, you can't kick its legs at the same time think that you're following it or you're serving it. So Prahlad Maharaj, he was not interested in materialistic education because he understood there's something superior. But the whole demonic civilization has no knowledge whatsoever. Yate vidu swartikatim hi Vishnu. They don't know that the goal of life is to reach Krishna. They think Krishna they don't even know what Krishna means. People see us on the street, sometimes they say, "Oh, are you Buddhists?" And they're very disappointed to find out we're not Buddhists. "Oh, I thought you were religious. I'm sorry." No, this is our Halloween costume, and we decided to wear it all year round. It's cheap. But dharma prayodita kaitavotra paramoni matsuranam satam. Generally, as Prabhupada writes here, dharma, if there is any dharma, people have a dharma, they get up in the morning and they used to go to work. I don't know what they're doing now. I guess here in Slovenia, people still are going to work, more or less. So they get up in the morning and go to work and do something for the development of so-called economic development in order to make sure everyone gets their required amount of sense gratification, and promise that in the future, sense gratification will be easier, economic development will be easier, and they'll live in sense gratification heaven. That's the goal. They don't know the goal of life is to obtain Krishna or Vishnu. They think the goal of life is to get money and enjoy as much sense gratification as possible until the end of life. And when people come and hear that that's not our goal, that we actually take seriously God, they think we're a fanatic religion, that we're going to threaten their advanced sense gratification, their endeavor to obtain the platform of Raganuga Kam. Raganuga Kam has been obtained by many animals. For instance, the hog in Vrindavan, because they're in Vrindavan, they're on the platform of spontaneous sense gratification. There's absolutely no impediment. There's no psychological hang-up in the hog in Vrindavan towards sense gratification. He's completely liberated from all restraints on the platform of spontaneous sense gratification. So he can sit in the sewer for eating, because in Vrindavan there are open sewers, they just flow out of people's houses, and the hog can sit there and everything flows into its mouth. And you can see the hogs have a big, big, happy smile, because they're getting free food and they're getting the remnants of all the Vaishnavas. And as far as sleeping goes, no one in Vrindavan, as far as I have observed, has ever woken up a sleeping hog. If a hog goes to sleep, you just let him go. You just let him lie where he is, wherever he is. Don't disturb him. And as far as sex, the hog loves everyone. He loves his mother, his wife, his children, everyone, his boyfriend, everyone he loves. And he defends the best he can. They have 15 minutes of defense when they're 5 years old, when they're children, and that's what they use for the rest of their life. But for the most part, except for some bungis in Vrindavan, no one wants to get near them. They offer their respects from a distance. And they have an occupation. They're the sanitation department in Vrindavan, so everyone respects them, that they're also doing service. And they're on the Raganuga Kam. There's nothing that they won't do for their sense gratification, and they're never embarrassed by it. No one ever criticizes a hog for growing fat. There's no hog that I ever met which was on a diet. Doesn't matter how big they get, it's just the right size. So this is what people want to become. This is what they want to obtain through their endeavor. They're feeling they're being restricted by this so-called religion. And they're dreaming of the time when they can just do whatever they want without any restriction. But human form of life is not meant for that, and therefore one will never be satisfied with such so-called happiness. People are always looking forward to the weekend or for the vacation, when I can have my vacation and I can enjoy, I can sleep as long as I want, and I can eat whatever I want all day long, and maybe there's sex life included in the package. if I pay a little extra. And then there's, of course, defense. I have my video game with me, and I can practice killing things in case they dare look at me in the wrong way. So people are looking forward to that, and then after they go on vacation and they try to enjoy their senses for a week or two, they feel like they need another vacation to overcome the effects of their vacation. So people are just dreaming that they're going to be happy through the process, but actually they become more and more frustrated. So dharma prayojita kaitava trata paramo nimatsara sitam. So kaitava, cheating. Maya is always cheating us, telling us, don't worry, just enjoy. And because you're a great personality, you won't have to suffer. Other people have to suffer if they try to enjoy their senses too much, but you don't have to because you're a great person. Krishna will forgive you because you're his devotee. But that's called kaitava, because the material nature works equally well for everyone, practically speaking. And if one violates the laws of material nature, then one will have to suffer. Just like our stomach. Does anyone know how big our stomach is? Yes. That's about how much food we can hold. Because that's all the stomach, that's as big as the stomach should be. Of course, the bigger our heart is, the more our stomach, the more as our eyes get wider, the stomach expands proportionally. And the heart makes room. Shifts over to the back of our body. But that's as big as it is. So if you eat more than that, then you have to suffer indigestion. It's not possible to avoid it. And indigestion is the root cause of all illness. So people don't know why they're sick. They're going this whole thing, COVID, this virus thing, whatever. But the last thing they're going to give up is overeating. They're going to give up. They're not going to follow any kind of particular food diet. Or if it is, it's just usually a mental concoction. They'd rather die than having to follow a particular lifestyle. As a matter of fact, they will die. But they'd rather die than restrain their senses, because that's all they know. Unlimited sense gratification. That's the goal. But we're introducing dharmak prayojita kaitava. First of all, that this is cheating, that we're not the body. And our aim of life should not be just to gratify the senses to the end of life. But as long as one has the demoniac mentality, then that one will, as one tries to gratify the senses into the end of life, unrestrictedly, then one will develop a demoniac mentality. And the demoniac mentality teaches one or induces one to enjoy the senses unlimitedly because of lack of any genuine Krishna consciousness. In the absence of Krishna, then we think we're competing with others to become the supreme here. And one is not aware of Krishna because one is covered by material desire. Therefore it says, Chintyam aparayam cha pralayantam upashitya kama papoga paramam etavam iti nischita asha pashu shutarabhada kama krota parayana yahanti kama bogartan anine kama sanchaya. They believe to gratify the senses unto the end of life is the prime necessity of human civilization, and therefore there can be no measurement for their anxiety. So the case of point, which we all heard about, was the king who asked his minister, until what point of one's life does one have sex desire? So the minister replied that up until the time of death. The king couldn't believe it. How is it possible? Old people, how can they have a desire for sense gratification? He said, no, it's a fact. I'll prove it to you. So one day he ran into the king's chamber and said, come with me and bring your young, beautiful daughter, and I'll prove it to you. So they came into the room of the king and the minister entered into a room of an old man who was on his deathbed, who was just about to die. And he completely ignored the king and the minister. But then in walked the beautiful king's daughter, young daughter, and immediately the man sat up in bed and winked at the princess, and then died. So then the king was convinced, yes, it's a fact, that even up to the time of death, that one has sex desire. And because of sex desire, therefore one's false ego expands. That I am the Lord, I am the enjoyer. That's what the illusion. Along with sex desire comes illusion also. You can't have one without the other. If we're in a delusion or illusion, it means that there's underlying element is karma. And from karma came lobha, and from lobha comes krodha, and from krodha comes delusion. So you can't have one without the other. If we think we're pure, then we're wrong. Even Indra, who's in the mode of goodness, or others, even Brahma, he was also at times, not so commonly, but afflicted by material desire. So what to speak of our poor selves, how can we imagine that we're free from these things? But it doesn't mean that because we're not free from them, it doesn't mean we should act on them unrestrictedly. But along with that mentality, we should know, idam adya maya labdvam imam prapse manoratam, idam asti amapime, pavishati prahladanam, asto maya hatakshatror, hanishe chaparanapi, ishvaraham ahambogi, siraham balavan sikhi, adyo bijanavana konyo si sadrishamaya, yakshe dashami moditya ityagana vimohitaha. So much wealth do I have, and I'll gain more and more according to my scheme. So much do I have, and I'll get more and more in the future. He is my enemy, and I've killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am perfect. I am powerful, and I am happy. I am surrounded by rich and aristocratic relatives. I shall perform some sacrifice. I shall give some charity. And as Purnachandra Maharaj said in his Hitamrita, that I will go to the heavenly planets there and I'll kiss the apsaras. In this way, the demoniac is deluded by ignorance. So along with sex desire comes this false ego. And along with that false ego comes this imagination that we're somehow or another powerful, we're happy, we have so many rich aristocratic relatives, so many things, so many delusions come about. So we have to become aware of it. If we're not aware of it, that means that we're probably absorbed in it. When one can actually see things as they are, then the influence of the three modes of material nature gradually ceases. So we shouldn't be embarrassed. We should just see things as they are. And then the influence will diminish. When we don't see things as they are, it means that we're simply absorbed in it. We actually take it seriously. And if we see things as they are, and we try to act according to devotional service, then we can actually make progress. Now, Hiranyakashipu, he was so absorbed in his enmity towards Vishnu, he didn't want to hear anything. Therefore, you can know who's actually a born-again demon and who will get born again and again. If you introduce Krishna consciousness to them and they say, I don't want to hear, go away. Sometimes we go on Harinam, We did Rath Yatra. And you see people putting they get the good opportunity to hear about Krishna, and they put their fingers in the ear to block any sound vibrations that might go in and purify their heart, destroy their self-image that they're God, or they're becoming God, or even God bows down before them. Just like one time when the Pope, he was in America and he was driving a big limousine, but he wanted to drive. He wanted to see what it was like to drive in America. So he told his chauffeur to let me drive for a while. So he was driving very fast on the road, breaking the speed limit, and a policeman came by and stopped the car. He came over and he said, "I'm sorry, I have to give you a ticket." He looked into the window and he saw the Pope was there. So he called up his supervisor and said, "Sir, I can't give this man a ticket because he's driving God." He said, "How do you know?" He said, "Because the Pope is his chauffeur." So we have to accept Krishna and act accordingly. Try to hear about Krishna, which is the most difficult thing to do, although it seems very easy. But actually hear about Krishna is very, very difficult, because to take it seriously requires a lot of tapasya. And unless we take it seriously, then we won't be able to develop the power to hear. As we take it seriously and apply it, therefore our power to hear increases. And as our power to hear increases, our ability to understand increases. And as our ability to understand increases, our ability to practice it and to think about it increases. So it takes a while for those things to develop. But Hiranyakashipu, he wouldn't hear anything. He knew if he heard about Krishna, then his materialistic life would gradually slacken. As I said that story previously, how Narada Muni and Parvata Muni came by when Hiranyakashipu was performing austerities, and therefore they were chanting in the form of sparrows. Came in the form of sparrows, chanting at the top of their lungs, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And so disturbed Hiranyakashipu that he couldn't complete his austerity. So he went home, and all day he was just thinking about Vasudeva, which is like the worst thing he could imagine. And of course, because of that meditation, when he was enjoying with his wife, Prahlad Maharaj was born. And therefore it was the root cause of his downfall, or his elevation actually. But somehow or another he got the association of Narada Muni and Parvata Muni, and he was Krishna conscious enough to create a child, Prahlad Maharaj. And therefore Prahlad Maharaj is ultimately as Hiranyakashipu said, the handle of the axe of Vishnu that cut down the tree of the demons, the dynasty of the demons. So because he heard a little bit, just a little tiny bit, from Narada Muni, Prahlad Maharaj was a demon previously, well, more or less, he wasn't a pure devotee. But because he heard from Narada Muni, he became a pure devotee. And similarly, because Hiranyakashipu heard from a pure devotee, Narada Muni in the form of a sparrow, therefore the seed of his liberation was born in the form of Prahlad Maharaj, from which Lord Nrsimhadev came and liberated Hiranyakashipu. So even if a demon hears about Krishna, he becomes liberated. So therefore we should keep on hearing. And one day we'll become liberated too. Hopefully like Prahlad Maharaj rather than Hiranyakashipu. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Why do they need dharma in the demoniac school?
Because it's not the religiousness that we think of. They're actually taking dharma to figure out how to get the maximum amount of economic development for sense gratification, rather than the minimum. So they only read specific scriptures. So there's scriptures for demoniac people also, to tell them how they get the maximum amount of economic development for sense gratification. Even Ravana was a great scholar. In between eating Brahmins, he used to study a lot. So therefore, when he was on his deathbed, Lord Ramachandra told Bibhishan to go and learn the art of managing a country from Ravana, who was expert. Similarly, Bhishma Dev, well, there are examples of demons who were quite learned, like in Jarasandha, who was a strict follower of the Veda culture, because that's where everything comes from. If you're a demon, you want to control the world, you want to get the maximum amount of economic development with sense gratification, you have to follow the recipe for it, the right recipe for it. And that's also there in the scripture. Nigama kalpatra galitambalam. There's some, whatever you want, you can find there. Anything else? Just like nowadays, we have these little demons. What do they manufacture? You know, of course, without dharma, no one could actually live in any kind of civilization. So there's some kind of dharma, even in the present civilization, although it's not very clear and strong. But what are the great strides that people have actually made? Although they advertise how advanced their medical system is, but it kills more people than it saves. They may advertise how wonderful their food production is, but most of it is very unhealthy. So they may advertise how advanced modern civilization is, but actually it's not very advanced, because they don't follow religious principles for the greater part. They don't protect the cows, they don't protect the land, they don't protect people, and therefore people are not really advancing, they're suffering. Anything else? Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande.